Good day, it's April 11th. O.J. Simpson is dead. Emotions are running wild for many, but thank you so much for checking out the Sportsline Podcast here on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neill. As we love to do, successful teams, athletes, executives, and even broadcasters from the Hamilton, Halton, and Niagara area are the spotlight on this podcast, so let's get right down to business. Well, in grade 8, this fella was 115 pounds and football called his name. Over nearly 2 decades, the University of British Columbia product was a natural on the offensive and defensive line, and the first-round draft pick was recognized as an MOP and an all-star. Also winning both a Vanier and Grey Cup along with his teammates. Married with 3 kids, Jason Riley spread his experience and wisdom to children as an educator, a coach, and a mentor. In addition, he continues to give back and assist those he went to war with on the football field, working with the CFL Alumni Association. We want to bring the big man in to talk about a serious subject, but there are so many good times to reminisce on. Jason Riley, it's great for you to be here on the Sportsline Podcast. And like I said, some things to really chat about, but boy, your career has really been outstanding. I knew about it, but when I really dug deeper, wow, you had a good time, didn't you?
Thanks, Bubba. Yeah, it's been a great ride, and I can't complain about anything, the good and the bad, and we continue to do good things with the Alumni Association along with the Tiger Cat Club.
And you keep all the boys together, too. I've heard, other players that have been sitting here and executives that have played the game, whether it be football, hockey, whatever it is, they say getting together with the old guys, it's always fun.
Well, you're a Marauder grad, and as a matter of fact, tonight there's a McMaster gathering down at the West Town on Lock for former players and coaches from McMaster. Yeah. Right tonight. So it's ongoing. Mm-hmm. I also have regular breakfast meetings with we call it the Originals Traveling Breakfast Club from the McMaster coaches that came in with Greg Marshall when we turned the program around after it took a bit of a downturn. After Bernie Custis left, God bless him. He did very well here, and the guys did very well. But after that, it took a bit of a downturn, and Greg Marshall was brought in, and that original coaching staff that Greg brought together, we won 4 Yates Cups in a row to turn the program around, and that's a record for the Yates Cup in Ontario on the OUA. So we're very proud of that, and we still get together on a regular basis to get caught up with what's happening in our lives now as grandparents, and then also just reminisce about the past. So it never stops.
Yeah, those were some unbelievable teams. Jason Behe and Adam Archibald were the quarterbacks of the teams, and
John Behe
from Nelson, Adam Archibald, and Coach Joe.
I still remember when their career ended because it was an illegal fake field goal that Queens pulled on us down at Ivor Wynne Stadium that ended their career because the referees apologized the next day, because it was a sleeper play and it's totally illegal. But
where was the replay at that time?
Pat Sheehan and Pat Tracy, they pulled it off. They convinced the refs that it was okay, and then they won. I think that was a Yates Cup game that ended their careers, unfortunately.
Let's talk about your career, and you were a resident of the West Coast at the time, and as you said, 115 pounds in grade 8. Take it from there.
I was a tiny little guy. I didn't hit my growth spurt till like grade 10 when I was about 15. And so I was bullied a lot as a kid. My family moved around a lot because my dad was a victim of fraud in California. Before that, my sister was born in California. It's all in my book, right? So I don't want to spend too much time on it. But, my brother was in 13 schools by the time he was in grade 11. That's how much we moved. We lived in Nova Scotia. We lived all over Ontario. We lived in Port Arthur. We lived in Port Credit. We lived in Scarborough, So it was always, we were the new kids on the block. Right. So, like when we moved out from Ontario to BC, we were wearing bell bottoms, you know, in Ontario with brush cuts, and in BC they had mullets and they had jeans. So we were like stood out like sore thumbs, right? And so and I was a little wee guy, so I was always getting in fights, defending myself. My dad taught me how to box, and then, you know, I started, but I was fighting all the time, and then I found football in grade 8. I found football, and that became an outlet for that anger that I experienced being bullied.
Right.
So writing the book, I initially, you know, I planned on writing, you know, raw bone stories from the trenches. Right. You know, in a way that, you know, a lot of people don't. If you don't play the game, you don't really see it. So that, you know, people have told me, you got to write a book to explain what it's like in the trenches for real, right? So initially that's what it was going to be, geared towards coaches and, you know, advanced fans that understand the game in detail. As I was writing, it became therapeutic that I didn't realize how impactful bullying was on me as a child, and why I had that rage inside me that I needed football as an outlet for it. Right. And football basically kept me out of jail because I was fighting so much. And then I'd also bounced all the way through university to put myself through school. Right. And but I was 115 pounds in grade 8. I know that because I was on the wrestling team, and I wrestled in a 115 lowest weight class. Oh, for sure. And I was really wiry because my older brother, I have 3 brothers, and my dad was a wrestler in the Air Force and a boxer. And you know, we wrestled all the time. We were like bear cubs, you know. Mom would give us heck. Dad say, you know, it's good for them. Let them wrestle, you know. And so I was a pretty good wrestler and wiry. And then I was used to wrestling my big brother who was 5 years older, you know. Right. And so then, but I played all the sports in grade 8, and football became my number one. By grade 10, the only sport I wanted to play was football. Because I loved it so much. Well, and you locked right in, obviously. You did real well out at UBC. You become a first-round draft pick for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but you end up in Hamilton. Take me through those years. Well, Al Bruno wrote me a letter when I was at UBC saying that they were interested in drafting me. And back then they didn't have the combines and all that stuff like they do now, right? Which is, I mean, the sport has advanced so much since I played, but you know, he showed interest, but then Cal Murphy drafted me with Winnipeg before Al could draft me, and I went to Winnipeg as a first-round pick as a defensive lineman. I played defensive line all the way through all the way through high school and university. Won a Vanier Cup at UBC. And broke sack records. Yeah, well, I had the Canadian sack record for many years. As a matter of fact, it was Ben Daglar, I think. Ben Daglar. He broke my record at MAC, and it was kind of funny. The media never really picked up on that. One of the guys that was on our team at MAC broke my sack record. While you're coaching there. Yeah, while I was coaching him. Right. And so, but anyway, it's a neat story. And so I was, we were all Canadian. We were undefeated in '82 with UBC, and played Western in the Vanier Cup. And that was something else, you know. So I learned to hate Western at a very young age, right? So then when I came to MAC, it was just natural to hate Western, right? But Western is so good. There's such a great program. And, you know, of course, my friend Greg Marshall, we coached together at MAC for all those years, and he's the head coach at Western again, and he's doing great. It's a program of excellence, no doubt about it. But Al Bruno eventually brought me to Hamilton and to play offensive line, and I'd never played offensive line before, other than I dabbled in it a little bit in Saskatchewan. I had a shortstop in Saskatchewan, and they actually asked me to convert over to offensive line. I had never played it, and you know, I enjoyed it. I loved the camaraderie of the unit. I was playing in Saskatchewan. Roger Aldag, Bob Poley, Laurie Skullroot, who's Hamiltonian. They were all great guys. Took me under their wing, and then of course, you know, welcome to football. I got released, and as soon as I got released, Al Bruno brought me out to Hamilton and said, "I want you to play offensive line for us." And I said, "Coach, I've never played a game an offensive line. I've practiced. I've played a part of an exhibition game, but I never started a game at O-line." And he said, "That's okay. We want you as part of our group, you know." And then he brought in Miles Gurrell, Dale Sanderson, Mike Dirks, Ralph Schultz, Daryl Harley, Brian Hutchings. Like, we had a really good group, and we still, like the camaraderie just built from there.
And a good O-line coach too.
Oh, Coach John Salavanis, one of the kindest and best people you'll ever meet, and a fantastic offensive line coach that just mentored us every step of the way. And you know what? He never was heavy-handed. He never said, don't do this. He just suggested ways. He suggested different ways to get the job done. And you could either take it or leave it. And generally we would take it, But I learned so much from him about playing and about coaching and motivation. And he used to have the whole O-line over him and his wife Marilyn have the whole O-line over for Thanksgiving dinner at their house, and we eat them out of house and home, like these gargantuan men all over 300 pounds feeding us, and that. But then you learn that the camaraderie off the field, it just pays dividends on the field because you learn to love each other,
right.
And teammates learn to love each other.
But that's the old line. Like, you've got to be able to trust what either guy's doing.
Exactly. Right? So even to this day, Sal and all the guys, we get together and I mean, it's just, if anybody needs anything, it's just a matter of asking, and the rest of us are there for them.
Well, I've had Coach Sal here on this show, on this podcast, and I do some work with him on the Ticats Audio Network, and I don't think I know everything, but I think I know the game really well, and he teaches me things.
Oh yeah,
and it's amazing. And I never thought about that, or I never took the time to think about that angle, or why that would have happened. And he's just so intelligent and knowledgeable about the sport. And there's not a man or a woman out there that would ever say anything bad about Coach Sal. You're right about that. His approach, even to this day on media, it's so solid. It's amazing.
And he'll tell you himself, he's got a great face for radio.
I agree, but so do I as well.
I mean, he's got that baritone voice for a small man. Mm-hmm. He's got a very deep baritone voice that comes across so well on the radio. And then, like, to me, he was the closest thing to John Madden, who really would delve into the offensive line play. Not a lot of guys understand the details of the nuances of offensive line. And John Madden was one. He was an NFL line coach before he became a head coach. And Sal was, a fantastic offensive line coach that taught us so much. So and he could describe the play from the offensive line standpoint,
right,
and educate people right on the radio.
1986. The special year here in Hamilton. I know we celebrate 99 because it's the last one. Hard to believe here in 2023 or 24. But that team
should have been a couple in between. But
you know that, and I know that. I mean, you can't go back, right?
No.
But you can go back to 86.
Yeah.
What a squad that was! And you talk about coming together at the right time. Yeah. Talk to me about that squad.
Well, once again, that team. I mean, we had. Unlike nowadays, they only had, I think they had 6 coaches, including the head coach, right? And so a very tightly knit coaching staff, and Al Bruno was such a player's coach, like Sal. Al Bruno was a wonderful man, a wonderful person, and a great coach, but his character was unsurpassed, and so everybody respected him so much, and we wanted to run through a wall for him, And if you had a family issue, he would support you 100%, and so there was always that aspect of it where some coaches that doesn't come into play. It's all about winning, right? So his thing was winning is a byproduct of that family unity and the love for each other on the team. And you know what? The defense, like the offense, I mean, Mike Walker is a good friend of mine, defensive tackle, all Hall of Famer, and he used to stay. Him and his wife Kristen would stay with us every training camp till they found a place, and so we became really good friends, and we're battling against each other every day in practice, right? But Grover Covington. Ben Zambiazzi, you know, all these guys, they're still great friends of ours on the offense, you know, and mine. And so, you know, in the locker room.
And not to interrupt, but people forget that in those days compared to nowadays, when O-line and D-line and linebackers squared off against each other, it's in full pads and you guys are going hard on each other.
Oh, yeah.
Not like today.
We were in full pads every day.
Yeah.
Every single day. It's not like today that we didn't have it in you know, the collective bargaining agreement didn't have
like touch football.
No pads. You know, this is flagged for 5 days, and you just have pads on game day. And I'm exaggerating, obviously, but yeah, we were in full pads every day. In training camp, we were in full pads twice a day. And sometimes, you know, when things got heated and the coaches were upset that something wasn't working, we just kept pounding and pounding and pounding, and it turned into a game-like situation during practice. And boy, that really toughened you up, you know, and you got better, you know. But by and large, the offense and the defense, we loved each other as teammates. And so we'd go to the wall for each other. And don't forget, we lost the Grey Cup in '84. We lost the Grey Cup in '85. And we were bound and determined that we were not going to lose the Grey Cup in '86. Like, we kind of vowed to each other that, you know, this was life and death. We were not leaving that field without winning the Cup. We didn't want to be, but the Buffalo Bills, right? We didn't want to be another Buffalo Bills franchise losing 3 in a row and then 4. They lost. But you know, you could see in the film, if you watch the replay of the game and you watch the introductions, how serious we were that day coming onto the field and how loosey-goosey Edmonton was. Because Edmonton was, you know, they were close to being undefeated. I can't remember their record, but they were the favorites.
I think they were 16-2.
We were the underdogs by
14-2.
far, right? And what happened leading up to that gave us so much confidence was the Eastern final, which was back then, it was a 2-game total point series. Played here first, and we lost by 14 points
against the Argos.
So of course the Argos went out and bought their plane tickets and bought their hotel rooms and probably sized up their Grey Cup rings because they beat us by 14. We got to go into Toronto, play them the second game, and you know, it was a total point series. So then they got up 12 points in the first quarter. They were up 26 points on us in the first quarter of that game, and we came back and beat them. And it, you know, it was what the turning point was. The second quarter, the long snapper snapped the ball over the punter's head, and Ilisic ran back, but we recovered the ball. Well, it didn't matter because it was third down, so we recovered the ball or tackled him, whatever, in their end of the field, and we consequently scored a touchdown that turned the entire game around. And after that, they were playing prevent, and we were playing to win. You know what I mean? And it just rolled from there. I remember Walter Bender made some spectacular catches. He had the game of his life that game, and Mike Kerrigan was throwing darts. and then, you know what? Al Bruno was, I think, the only coach I've ever seen that took his team to the Grey Cup 3 years in a row with 3 different starting quarterbacks, right?
It would have been for sure.
Dieter Brock.
That's right, Dieter.
Ken Hobart and Mike Kerrigan. 3 years in a row. I don't know if any other coach has ever done that.
I'd have to do a little research because that's a I'm going to say that's probably a record.
Yeah.
I can't think of that.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and I don't think Al got enough credit for that either.
Well, I mean, I think the credit, excuse me, is I think about when you eventually did win the Grey Cup that year in Vancouver, and that picture will stay in our minds forever. You right alongside him of the team carrying him off the field.
I have to give Dale Sanderson full credit for that photo. I do it in my book too. He comes up to me and says, "Jace, let's pick Al up, right? Let's give him a ride." You know, I go, "Sure." I threw my helmet down on the bench. He had his helmet on at the time, so yeah, he's got his helmet. There it is. He's got his helmet on, and it was his idea. We pick him up. That picture was on the front page of every sports page in Canada, and I am clearly visible. And there's Mike Dirks. He's he's injured. He didn't even play in the game, and he got more pub than poor Dale Sanderson in that picture. You know, but what an iconic picture. That is the highlight of my professional career, other than my marriage and my kid's birth. That is the highlight of my career right there.
Beautiful
It's unbelievable.
stuff.
And you could see that it's still full. The stadium was packed in BC Place Stadium, my hometown. So both my wife's family and my family were there at the game watching us win the championship. And I'm telling you, my parents got pictures with Harold Ballard and the Grey Cup.
Yes,
my wife got a beautiful picture with Harold Ballard after the game, because he threw a huge party for us because we won him a championship. The Leafs never did.
Yes.
Right? Well, we did, and he loved us for that, even though the year before he called us overpaid bums because we used to.
That's Harold, though, right?
Oh yeah, a bunch of overpaid bums because we partied when we won and we partied when we lost, right? But that's another story. That's '84 when we were living in a house together. It was like when I first came in '84. I was invited to live with a bunch of guys. Ralph Schultz, Pat Brady, Steve Jackson, and Bill Howard. The fifth guy got cut, so they had an extra room for me in the house. I don't even know who it was that got cut. I didn't know him. And they go, we got a room. Our roommate got cut. We got a room for you. So I moved in with them, and we had so much fun that year. And win or lose, we partied because we were young single guys having fun, enjoying life, right?
Some big boys.
The neighbors wrote a letter to Harold Ballard and complained that these guys, they keep us up at night. Even after they lose, they party. And so Harold said, they're a bunch of overpaid bums. And then we go to the Grey Cup, and he's like, we're heroes again.
Oh, gosh.
But he threw us such a huge party in '86. Mm-hmm. And no expenses, were it was, what do they call it? Money was no object?
Yes.
So my ring is there. The '86 ring is such a beautiful, it's not the biggest ring you've ever seen, but I think it's one of the classiest I've ever seen. With the tiger jumping over the diamond. And the reason I bring it up is because he also made, if you take a cross-section of the top of the ring, with the tiger and the diamond, he gave a pendant to every wife. Like every significant other got a pendant, and the players got a ring. And
Wow.
Harold designed the ring, and he was so proud of it that he wanted to make sure the wives got one too.
That's a wonderful thing. I mean, again, Harold has got, there's some opinions about Harold, right? Some that are, warranted, and some that, but I always hear it from the people that played under him is that no one wanted to win more than Harold, and he always respected his players, whether it be the Leafs, I mean, at the time where there was some controversy in the end, but especially the Tiger Cats.
Speaking of Leafs, King Clancy.
Yep.
Right, former player and coach of the Leafs was Harold's best friend at the time when he owned the Tiger Cats. So the O-line would have a tradition. They had a tradition. We'd go in like 4 hours before the game, get all our lowers on. So lowers is meaning we get our ankles taped, we get our socks, we get our pants on, and our girdles and our pants and our shoes, and we'd be all ready to play. All we had to do was slip our shoulder pads and jersey on and helmet, and we'd be ready to play. So then we could relax. We'd go in, we'd play cards, play cribbage, read a book, what have you. And there, most of the O-line would be in there. Harold Ballard and King Clancy had to come early because before the elevator was built, the city put in an elevator for them.
Oh, yeah, you had to climb up.
Yeah, they had to climb up all the stairs to get up to the press box and get up to their seats, right? And so they'd always come in the dressing room, and they'd get the State of the Union from the O-line. And they'd chat us up, and how you guys doing? How you feeling? What do you think about your opponent? And this and that. And they were just total sportsmen. And they wanted to talk sports. They wanted the inside scoop before they started that trudging up the stairs, with their canes up to, and then finally the city, put in an elevator for them so they could just take the elevator up.
It only made sense
because they were, they're getting into their, late 70s, early 80s, I think.
Yeah, for
at
sure.
the time.
So you have this amazing career. I mean, you really have wonderful memories. And then comes a day in all sports where it's time to hang them up. And I think it's about 93 for you.
93, yeah.
And you step away and you become an educator. Where did this come from?
Well, you know what, Bubba, it's funny because, just the way the good Lord works, the way, however you want to explain it, depending on your perspective, the way the universe unfolds, right? Fate, karma. I mean, I was accepted into teacher's college at UBC when I first registered, right? And I wanted to do the concurrent education and arts program, and then have a teaching degree, because I really wanted to teach, because I loved my high school experience. I had great coaches, great teachers, and I really enjoyed, and I wanted to give back, and I wanted to help kids, like teachers helped me, as I said, being bullied and all that. And so the problem was that in grade 12 community recreation class, I tore my medial meniscus in my left knee in half. Ooh. And it was misdiagnosed. So I went all summer with it. I was supposed to be playing football in September, and back now they start camps early. But I mean, going to UBC in August, get settled, and then start camp and play in September. Well, when I went back to the doctor in August, the doctor sent me to a specialist and this Dr. Hunt said, you got to have knee surgery right now, because it was swelling up again, right? Right. And so they took my medial meniscus out, so it was bone on bone after that, no cartilage. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to recover in time to play this year. I don't want to lose a year of eligibility, so I'll take some time out. And I drove truck, and in that year or two that passed in that time, there was too many teachers. There was an abundance of teachers. So teachers from BC were going to Washington State and getting like a $5,000 signing bonus to go and teach in Washington State. Oh, wow. Because they had a shortage, but we had too many, So I thought, well, I'm going to change my major. I don't really know what I want to do. I'll just take a general arts program, but I dropped the education because I didn't think I was going to get a job, right? But that's what I wanted to do. So then I come out here, and I'm talking to Peter Giftopoulos at the Italian club after we got knocked out of the playoffs in, I think it was 88 or 87. And he says, so Gifto and I are talking about off-season jobs. And Tom Gallagher from Cathedral High School, the iconic coach from Cathedral, right? All won city championships multiple times, great sports family. And he overheard us. He says, Jason, I know you. You don't know me. I'm Tom Gallagher. He introduced himself. He says, I overheard you talking to Peter. He says, have you ever thought about teaching? And I said, yeah. And I told him, that was my first thing. But he says, well, do you have a degree? I said, yeah. He goes, well, right now we have a shortage of teachers in Ontario. So we need teachers. So you go and, talk to this person, talk to that person in the public board, Catholic board, and just, if you pass the interview process, you can teach with a letter of permission. So I did, and I did, and I started teaching in the off seasons. So I taught, and then I loved it, and so then I went to teachers college down in Dieuville. And by the way, we had 3 small children, and my wife is a saint, Paulette. Couldn't have done any of it without her, because she had 3 small kids. Here I am working, and then also going to school. I'd go to the library and do my assignments just to get some quiet time. And here's Paulette with 3 kids, right? So God bless her for that. But anyway, yeah, I got certified. I taught a ton, had lots of experience, and I got hired by both the Hamilton Public and the Halton Catholic. And it just turned out that I got more work with Halton, so I kind of leaned towards the Halton, and I taught for 30 years, But I also coached high school. I coached at Notre Dame for a few years. Then I transferred to Assumption, and I coached at Assumption High School. And is that your alma mater?
That's what I'm about.
Right on. Right. Yeah. So Ivan Jurgen's the head coach there, and we went to Teachers College at Dieuville together because
Jurgen is just retiring right now.
That's right. This coming year, this semester he's retiring. So he'll be there tonight if you're not too busy.
Those are old times, man. Those are old times.
Yeah.
Right? So, and Notre Dame, actually, just to interrupt you there, we sitting in your seat just yesterday.
Yes.
Eric Smith, Raptors broadcaster. Notre Dame graduate as well, too.
Right. And then you also had Chris Dooley on not too long ago.
Yes, last week.
Yeah,
last talking
week,
about Burlington Sports Hall of Fame.
Saw that, and he's a great guy, basketball coach and writer. As a matter of fact, my editor, he recommended her, Jennifer Sharman. She edited my book as well.
There you go.
So
all comes written in there.
But so I coached. I loved Notre Dame. Was a great experience. Assumption was my first it's funny because Assumption was my first school as a supply teacher when I was in 1989, and 30 years later, I retired out of Assumption. So full circle, one of those full circle things.
Yeah,
right?
Amazing. So you got the education in there. You're teaching kids in not just football, but you're teaching them the studies, and you get that education aspect of it, of your life. And it's your second career, I guess, essentially, is what it was, really, right? But somehow, some way, like you said, the coaching aspect at the high school level translates over to McMaster. You can't get football out of your life forever.
Right.
And you had real good years, as we talked about there, at McMaster, being an O-line coach.
And now Bruno, when he left, when he was fired from the Tiger Cats, and I still think it was unfair to fire him because in '89 we had the best record at that time, the best record ever, 12-6 by a Tiger Cat team, and played in the greatest Grey Cup at the time. They said it was the greatest Grey Cup game ever played.
The Saski
We
game,
lost 43-40 with the last second field goal. I talked in detail about that in my book too. And it was heartbreaking for Al because we should have won the game. We all believe that, but it's the way the cookie crumbles. You got to accept it and move on. But Al got fired the next year because we had about 12 starters injured and we had a 6-game losing streak, and he got fired. But he got hired by McMaster, and then as soon as I retired from playing, he asked me. Well, shortly after, he asked me if I'd come and coach his O-line for him. And so he brought me in '96, and I stayed at MAC coaching, I think, 5 head coaches, and we ended up winning the Vanier Cup, myself as a coach in 2011, and back in the same building at BC Place in Vancouver in front of all my family and friends. And it was a fantastic experience.
And those MAC teams, I'll tell you, when you look at the core of those teams, got to give you the pat on the back. The O-lines were always outstanding.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Bubba? That's my mantra. Any team in football, whether it's Pee Wee to, Grey Cup champion, generally speaking, unless there's some inordinate number, like that you got 8 fumbles or something or turnovers, the team that has the offensive line that dominates the most, that's the team that's going to win. And a lot of people don't realize that, because it doesn't matter how good your quarterback is, he can't throw the ball from his back.
It's true. That's
right?
so true. And as we talked about, and we kind of dusted on it, we talked about the brotherhood that you create when you are coaching, the brotherhood that you create when you are playing, the union of players and coaches as well too. But you all kind of tie it up here, and you all get back together, and you've been an important part of the Alumni Association. Mike Morialty was here a couple of months ago talking about he being part of the CFLPA and being part of the Alumni Association, and that sometimes, and you're a good example of someone who had a career lined up, you set yourself up, you said, whether it was a little luck and all of it involved, you had football, teaching career, coaching, and you continue on today.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen for everybody in the football game.
So I've been very, very fortunate, Bubba, and I thank God every day for my experiences and the wonderful life. How the Talking Heads song, Thank you for this. How did I get here? Thank you for this beautiful wife. Thank you for this beautiful house. Right? And
once in a lifetime.
Yeah, once in a lifetime. And I just love that song. And it reminds me of my wife, and the good fortune. But the thing is, though, that especially young people that are maybe listening out there, there's no substitute for hard work. Yeah, I mean, everything that I've accomplished is a result of hard work and goal setting. And I really recommend young people to set goals for yourself and shoot for what you love, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. If I did that when I was 115 pounds, I would never have ventured into football at all, right? And so there's no substitute for hard work. Just work hard at everything you do. Do what you say you're going to do, and you'll set goals to achieve the things that you want to achieve in life, and don't let people dissuade you from that, and you'll be successful.
And that's extremely important. And I think that's one of the things here with the Alumni Association is that you do continue to give back for those who maybe didn't have the opportunities you've had.
Yeah. I got involved with the Alumni Association early on. The thing about football is that the reality is it doesn't end on your terms. Your career never ends on your terms, unless you're someone like Chris Van Zyl, who, he went back after the surgery and all that, and he actually helped the team after that surgery.
Sure he did.
And then now he can retire in peace, with peace of mind that he did everything he wanted to do, in the game. The thing about football is it's such a physical game that most people, their body breaks down right when they're getting really good and they understand the game, because there's so many nuances in football. It's the most complicated game there is on the planet. And there's so many different skill sets for every different position, right? And so, you're finally getting good, and your body starts to break down. Like when I retired, I had a pulled hamstring, and I probably shouldn't have even been practicing, but I was playing games because we didn't have anybody else, because we were so limited at the time. The team was near bankruptcy and all that, right? So and then I got offered a teaching job, and I took it, right, because I had to support my family. But I think if Al Bruno was still there, I probably would have played a couple more years, because he would have find a way to give me the time to heal, right? But the truth is that most people, their career doesn't end on their own terms, right? So there's a bit of bitterness there, and so you don't contemplate being part of the alumni, because when you're playing, you think you're going to play forever. So if you're considering being an alumni member when you're playing, then your mind isn't in the right mindset to be successful when you're playing, right? And that's when you're going to get injured, right? So you're not going to entertain the idea, well, that's for the old farts, the Alumni Association, I'm not even thinking about that. And so it usually takes, a couple of years to make that transition from being a player to actually thinking, geez, I want to get involved with the Alumni Association, right? But our Alumni Association works closely with the Tiger Cats. More and more, we're building this camaraderie between the club and the alumni, and doing great things like the Wall of Honor dinner that's coming up this year. There's going to be meetings the selection committee will meet and choose the next Wall of Honor member. And I'm just there as a neutral observer. I don't vote on that, but I am on the planning committee for the actual dinner. And so those things are all in the works. Our golf tournament is coming up on the 27th. And, there's all kinds of great things moving forward with the alumni. And then the thing is, we also, what we do with the money that we generate, we have support fund, the CFL AA support fund, which funds from my book go to the support fund for former players that are experiencing financial difficulty. And then also now we're developed Ryan Donnelly, our current president, who I coached at MAC, by the way.
Right.
So I'm very proud of him. And he's our current president, and that'll be turning over at our AGM, because there's, our Constitution has turnover is good for in the admin, right? So Sandy Beveridge is going to be taking over, a great former player who's now a fireman. And so, we under Ryan's leadership, we've developed the support fund for the Tiger Cat alumni as well, right? So now there's two different support funds that former players, if you played for Hamilton, you can apply for both. Right. You can apply for the Hamilton support fund, and you can apply for the CFL AA support fund, right?
And there you go. It's all the brotherhood again, all getting tied again, working teammates, I think, if I may say, all working together.
The fraternity of the offensive line.
Yeah, the fraternity.
Well, fraternity of football,
football,
in my case, offensive line
of the game. Now you've touched on this a little bit, and I just want to get a little deeper, and we can maybe close on this, because I think it's really, really important. And you've talked about the book, and this. people, Mad Dog, your nickname here, Taming Mad Dog. Why did you write this book?
Well, I originally wrote it because I love whenever we get together, like I said, the alumni, whether it's McMaster coaches or whether it's Tiger Cat players that I played with, we always are sharing great stories about the game. And, people have said, Jason, you got to write these stories down. You got to write a book to share these stories with people that have never that never played the game, and they want to know what it's like. When they go to a game, they want to know what it's like in the trenches, right? So that my initial intent was just hardcore, raw bone stories from the trenches to people that really understand the game. Well, then my editor, who I mentioned, right, Jennifer, she's reading the original transcript, and first of all, she says, there's a lot of stuff I don't understand here because I'm not a football person. So if you want to broaden your audience, you've got to define some of these. I said, okay, send me a list of terms, and I'll define them, and we can maybe put them in the appendix, add an appendix, right, to help the average fan that may not understand. So I expected maybe 10, 12 terms, right? She sends me like 5 pages of terms, and it's like, oh my God, this is like writing an essay, right? So that added, so she says, no, that's perfect. She says, define all these and then do a diagram and put it in the appendix, and it'll help people. So people have told me they really have learned a lot about football from reading my book, because of the appendix and because of the way, we put it together. But on top of that, my editor also noticed that the stories when I was bullied as a child. And what I had done is I had described the incidents, but I didn't talk about how I felt about it. Those things were all locked away in the back, compartmentalized in my brain, right? As we tend to do as human beings, when we experience negative things, we don't want to dwell on that. We put them away, right? And we hide them in our mind. So she said, you know what? I think people really want to know more about the bullying aspect, and that can be an overall theme throughout the book. The way you've written those stories, I think they've had a lot of impact on you. And I thought about it, and I thought, geez, I think you're right.
Thank you, doctor.
I started right. Well, she is a PhD in forensic archaeology or anthropology.
Okay.
She's a PhD. She is. She's brilliant. So anyway, she recommended I do this. So then I went back. So the second transcript. Okay. So I wrote like 4 transcripts before we got to that. Mm-hmm. So I started writing, and it was like a floodgate opened up, and it became very therapeutic. I had no idea how much bullying had impacted me as a child. And I think about these kids nowadays, Bubba. Like, I went home to a safe and secure home with a supportive family. We have a very tight family, moving so much. It's like a team, right? We became a team, overcame all the obstacles that we faced, early on in my family life. And so I'd get home to a supportive family. Nowadays, kids, they're bullied in social media incessantly. And if they don't turn their device off at home, they're getting bullied at home. On social media, they're getting bullied 24/7. Some of them are so addicted to the devices they go to bed with them and they can't turn them off. And I think this is a major problem with our youth in our society today, is that our social media is doing a lot of damage to our kids, without actually understanding it or knowing, because they're like the guinea pigs of this social experiment, and we don't know. We don't have any conclusions from this experiment until we see down the road, 10 years, how much this has impacted our young kids. We're starting to see it because there is a spike in teenage suicide. There's mental health issues. I started seeing an increase in mental health issues because I was a first aid provider always in my schools. I'd always make sure that I had my first aid updated so that I could help young kids if they were in distress or injured, whatever. And I had, the year that I retired, the 2 years leading up to my retirement, which was 2019, I retired. Social media was starting to boom. It's I started before the internet was even available, right? Mm-hmm. So I saw it all, but the social media and the bullying, the online bullying, and And I saw more and more kids facing anxiety issues, more and more mental health issues, more and more anxiety attacks. I had kids that would call me by name. They would call me on the PA, they need Mr. Riley to deal with this, because I had dealt with them multiple times. And they would also call other teachers for other kids, obviously, right? But there was a few kids that knew me by name, and they would call for me, because then I got to the point where I could comfort them and bring their anxiety down. And, I have some tricks that I've learned in psychology classes and that I use with my players, and that's in the book too. That's Appendix 2. Appendix B. And so anyway, I would, seriously try. I saw this increase in mental health issues and anxiety, and now I've done the research. There's a spike in teenage suicide as a result, like depression and all these things. And I can't help thinking that a lot of it is exacerbated by social media and by these devices that the kids are addicted to, right? And I mean, now kids seem to be born with a phone in their hand, right? True. My kids, and luckily they were at the age where they got phones later on when they were older, but they didn't have them when they were kids.
Right.
And I'd hate to think of what the impact. Like, I mean, I've seen kids crying in my neighborhood, walking the dog, like 3-year-olds crying, and then parents putting like an iPad in their hands, and the kids stop crying. Like, they're crying for their device, and they're 3 years old. And it's like, wow, this is crazy. And in the classroom, the pandemic, like, when I taught, I would convince the kids, please respect the rules, leave your phone off during class, and let's learn as a community, right? So I would build a community in my class, and I would try not to go on my phone. And I said, of course, unless it's an emergency, that's different. Sure. But parents understood they weren't supposed to text. There seems to be more and more parents that think they can text and call their kids during class. Why are you doing that, right? I mean, you want your kids to focus on school, And so I didn't allow, for the most part, I didn't allow phones in my classroom, and you could do it back then, and kids would respect it. Because they wanted that. They want guidelines, and they want a quiet place to learn and share, right? If you can create that environment. But then after COVID, or during COVID, the phones became a necessity in the classroom, because half the kids, or more than half the kids, were at home doing online learning. And the other few kids were in the classroom, or maybe no kids were in the classroom. They were all online. It's because I did a little bit of supply teaching after I retired, and I just didn't like it, because I didn't have kids in front of me. I was talking to a monitor, and that's not why I started teaching, right? So yeah, I did a little bit, but I didn't really enjoy it because of that. And then now I find, talking to teachers and that, it's getting worse, because since the pandemic, the kids expect that they can have their devices all the time, right? And you can imagine, if you're a teacher trying to teach a new concept in math or whatever the subject is, and the kids are looking at their phones, and TikTok. I'm not on any social media other than Facebook to promote my camp, my upfront camp that I ran at MAC for 14 years for linemen. And I remember a coach convinced me to go on Facebook. I was never on any social media till then. And they said, you can really promote your camp and do good things if you go on Facebook. So I did. So I've been on Facebook ever since. And now I'm using it to promote my book, right?
Pick one. I keep telling people, if I could go back, I'd just pick one and leave it at that.
Yeah, because if
you can't find me, so be it.
Like, the thing is, like, how they say the kids have their attention spans are becoming shorter, right? And it's because they're going there. There's like a flash of news here, a headline here, or a friend here, and it's like 15-second flashes of information from all these different social media. How are you supposed to develop, a sense of learning, a sense of depth, a sense, of a depth of knowledge, and the ability to write a letter even, because they don't write a letter. They text for 10 seconds, boom, send, right? So I think it's having a big effect on our kids and our society.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you address those things and give perspective. I mean, no one's asking anyone for the world to change because, I mean, the world evolves and changes and there's new technology. But, you know, from someone like yourself that has seen both sides and lived both sides and relied on both sides, I get it. And it's important that you discuss these issues, you know, and again, going right back to the bullying aspect because it's something that you experienced. It's something that you can share that knowledge, and I think people, take it or leave it, need to hear some perspective, and I think that's the appreciative part of why you did this book, and certainly folks pick up the book. Where can they find the book, first of all?
They can get it right down at the Cat store at Tim's Field. They've been kind enough, the Tiger Cats Club. Well, as a matter of fact, I printed on Bob Young's online printing company, which is, a lot of people don't realize that Bob Young owns Lulu.com, which is a huge printing company down in the States, and it's phenomenal. I've actually got 2 books published on. I said it once again, goal setting is important for you young kids out there. But I set a goal that I wanted to write a book before I was 50, so I wrote a children's book. And my girls, who are very artistic, they illustrated it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I published that on Lulu.com, which is Bob Young's online publishing website. And then when I published this book, people said, well, you know, how are you going to publish it? Do you have a publisher? And I said, no, I'm going to self-publish it on Bob Young's website because it's such a great opportunity and it's such a great, you know, tool on the internet. And so, you know, it's available on Lulu.com, and the club has been totally supportive of it. I mean, they would have anyway, but I mean, because I'm also donating money, proceeds from the book sales go to the CFL Alumni Support Fund to help former players with medical bills if they need it, and also the Red Cross Bullying Prevention Foundation. So those are the 2 charities that I've chosen to donate the proceeds from my book, and so we're doing good in the community. And sales have been pretty good, pretty steady. Not earth-shattering, but pretty steady sales down at the store.
They're going to have a massive jump after this podcast.
I sure hope so. I sure hope so, because I hope I have to order more books, guys, because the book, hopefully you'll find the book very entertaining and also do something good for the community by purchasing the book. And it's also, so it's Lulu.com, and it's at the store. And I don't, you know, people say, well, you should get it on Amazon, but, you know, if you put it on Amazon, Amazon focuses on speed, whereas Lulu focuses on quality.
Right.
So I want to keep it on Lulu.
Well, we appreciate your quality.
Oh, thank you.
It's been fabulous chatting with you. It's been fabulous learning about the good, the challenges of your life as well, too. And you've certainly navigated and have become a great example for so many in this community. And your work is certainly appreciated. And I appreciate that you've come here on the Sportsline Podcast to tell your story.
Thanks, Bubba. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. Come again?
Thank you. Sure will.
Right on.
Thank you.
Folks, we love talking sports from a local, provincial, and national perspective. And if you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline Podcast want you. Please comment, hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button, and be sure to check out all the informative and entertaining podcasts we do have to offer at CHCH. For the wonderful minds and hands that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.